Hello friends, in this introductory lecture on lateral earth pressure theories, initially we are going to see what is this concept, but it is always better to start any chapter by knowing its application so that when we know the practical applications, why we are studying any particular theory, that is clear to us, and that is what we are going to see in this lecture. Actually, before studying any concept, it is always better to learn about its applications so that it becomes easy for us to understand that concept if we know where that concept is applied. In case of retaining structures also, before actually studying the concept behind retaining structure, let us see where we require such kind of structures. They are usually required or provided to support the soil when it is raised to a certain height. The example of that can be subway, where we want vehicular traffic to pass below and lay a railway track above it. Now, for this purpose, we are required to raise the original ground level to a certain height, but then soil will not stand on its own, and in that case, we require to support this soil by some structure which we call as retaining structure because it retains the soil behind it. Another example can be basement walls where we require to provide a parking. Basement walls are connected at the top with the floor slab above. And one more example we can see in case of bridges where the bridge abutment walls retain the soil behind them and then the deck slab is connected at their slab. Even though the nature of lateral earth pressure is different in all these situations, but one thing is common, and that is the retaining structure which supports the soil and resists the lateral earth pressure. Another example we can see in normally hilly or mountainous areas when we are required to construct the road in the form of ghat roads, then on one side there is a valley and another side there is a mountain, and then there are chances that this part of mountain which we have broke for construction of this road may come down, landslide may occur. So in order to avoid any mishap, we are constructing a retaining structure like this which retains this material and prevents from coming down to the road. Now before we go further, let us understand some basic concept. If we pour dry, clean sand, then a heap is formed, as you can observe here. Now, what happens when this heap forms? Initially, the particles of sand, you might have observed that they glide down the slope, and after some time, the slope becomes stable. What happens exactly within it? So, if we magnify a certain region of the slope and see what is happening within the particles of sand, then we can view some such thing that every individual particle has its own weight acting in the downward direction, and there is a frictional force which is acting in the upward direction. But this frictional force may not always be upward, it can be inclined also, and in that case the vertical component of the frictional force will resist the downward acting components of weight, and the horizontal components of these inclined frictional forces, they can balance each other, which are not shown in the figure, but they will balance each other. Rightward and leftward forces will balance each other. So in short, when sum of all the vertical forces and sum of all the horizontal forces is equal to 0, at that time the slope attains equilibrium, and when it attains equilibrium, at that moment, whatever is the angle the slope makes with the horizontal, that is known as angle of shearing resistance or angle of internal friction. Now, when the angle of slope is less than this angle phi, which is angle of internal friction, then the slope remains stable. If you try to provide angle of slope more than angle of internal friction, means suppose let us consider that instead of the slope being inclined, if you want to provide a vertical face to this soil, then soil will not stand obviously and it will collapse. So in that case, you are required to provide some earth retaining structure. So this is how and this is where you require earth retaining structure. This is the necessity of the earth retaining structure. So friends, after studying all these application, now I hope that it is clear to you that what is the importance of lateral earth pressure, and in the forthcoming lectures we are going to see the mechanics behind it and how we are analyzing the earth retaining structures.